The first thing I felt was cold. Not the polite, winter morning kind of cold, but the deep, whispering cold that crept beneath your bones and started rearranging furniture in your marrow. I woke up face down in what looked like shattered glass and smelled vaguely like burnt ozone and citrus. My helmet visor was cracked, my HUD blinking a polite series of red notifications. Oxygen low, comms offline, structural integrity compromised. You know, the usual post-crash morning checklist. I groaned, sat up, and immediately regretted it. My ribs felt like someone had attempted CPR with a sledgehammer. Still, I was alive. For a guy who'd ridden a flaming dropship through a war zone and belly flopped into an alien forest, that was impressive. Or stupid. Possibly both. I staggered to my feet, surrounded by crystalline trees that shimmered like ice sculptures under a lavender sky. The air was thick with static, and every step I took kicked up dust that glowed faintly before fading. Nothing looked familiar. No friendly signal. No backup. Just me, my failing exosuit, and what I assumed were the local wildlife staring at me from behind glowing fronds with the kind of curiosity that usually preceded dinner. My name's Cade Mercer, Lieutenant, Human Expeditionary Corps, and as of roughly 10 minutes ago I was very, very lost. Something moved at the edge of the clearing. I spun too fast and fell flat on my back like a graceless turtle. Blasters powered up with a low whine. Shapes emerged, elegant and tall, armor etched with glowing sigils and weapons that looked too advanced to argue with. At least 6 of them, surrounding me in a crescent. Their helmets resembled elongated masks, with twin horizontal slits for eyes that pulsed with soft amber light. I raised my hand slowly. "Hi, anyone speak English or Galactic Common, Esperanto, Mime?" One of them stepped forward and in perfect clipped English replied, "You are injured, and you are trespassing. Also, you smell like sulfur and panic." Well, at least we'd established a rapport. They moved fast after that. No roughness, just the kind of efficiency that said they'd done this before. My weapons were gone before I could blink, my helmet detached and tossed aside. Someone scanned me with a hovering device that beeped angrily. Another injected something cold into my neck. A few seconds later, my ribs hurt a lot less, though the side effect was that I could now taste the color green. A short flight later, inside a ship that looked like a flying seashell carved from obsidian, we arrived at their capital. Or maybe a palace. Honestly, I couldn't tell if I was in a city or an art exhibit curated by a sentient jellyfish. Everything shimmered, refracted light in impossible ways. The floor responded to footsteps with rippling pulses, and the air smelled like static and orchids. I was escorted into a chamber that looked like a cathedral, and a planetarium had a child and raised it on mystery novels. At its center stood a throne made of something that resembled liquid metal frozen mid-wave, and seated upon it was the queen. She was striking, tall, graceful, eyes like collapsing stars. Long silver hair that floated slightly, like gravity was just a suggestion, and ears long, curved elegantly, tipped in gold. She looked like a human woman drawn by someone who had seen one described in a poem and then been handed alien DNA and a bucket of starlight. The guards bowed. I did not, mostly because I was still figuring out how to stand without groaning. She spoke. Her voice was calm, melodic, but with an edge that made you wonder how many people had died hearing it. "You are the human from the wreck." "I am," I said, managing to not fall over. "Cade Mercer. Friendly neighborhood interstellar tourist. Sorry about the crash. Your planet wasn't on the map and your weather system doesn't like small spacecraft. Neither does mine, to be fair." She didn't smile, not even a twitch. Tough crowd. "You are being treated," she said. "Your injuries were extensive. A ruptured lung, 4 fractured ribs, deep tissue damage, and a wound on your side that appears unique." I blinked. Unique how? Because it glows in the dark when I eat too much spice. She stepped down from the throne, every movement precise. As she approached, the guards subtly tensed. She waved them off, stepping closer. Her gaze locked onto my torso. Without warning, she gestured. A medic approached, waved a thin scanning rod over my side. A hologram projected midair, my old scar. Faded, jagged, the result of a shrapnel wound from a skirmish on Varga 4. I always thought it looked like a badly drawn lightning bolt. Apparently, I lacked imagination. The queen froze. Her eyes widened and her breath caught. She stepped back once slowly, like the air had thickened. "That mark," she whispered, it is impossible." I squinted at the hologram. "What, this thing? I got that after falling on a piece of my own gun. Glamorous, I know." "No," she said. Her voice had changed, quieter, almost reverent. "That symbol is ancient, sacred. It was the crest of the Skyborn, a lineage that ended generations ago. You cannot be real." That was new. The room had gone silent. Not just quiet, but silent. As if the architecture itself was holding its breath. I scratched my head. "Look, I've been called a lot of things, idiot, hero, meat popsicle, but never imaginary. You're sure it's the scar and not just the haircut?" Still nothing. She looked at me like I'd grown wings and started speaking in mathematics. I gestured weakly to the hovering scar projection. "So, do I get a prize, or am I about to be sacrificed to a volcano deity?" She didn't laugh, but she stared, studied me like I was a relic unearthed from beneath her civilization's bones, and then she turned to her guards. "Summon the High Seers. Alert the Hall of Records, and bring the Codex of Prophecies." "Oh boy," I muttered. "This is either going to end with me becoming royalty or getting disintegrated. 50-50, right?" As they led me away, one of the guards muttered 40-60. Fantastic. The room they put me in was either a prison cell or the most confusing spa I'd ever seen. The walls hummed softly with light, shifting color depending on my movements. The bed, or what I assumed was a bed, was a floating slab of something that felt like warm memory foam and occasionally muttered things to itself in Orillari. Once it told me I was very squishy but noble. I thanked it. Manners matter. They hadn't locked the door, but a glowing arc of energy hovered where the exit should be. I figured walking into it would probably give me a new hairstyle. Not in the good way. A soft chime sounded, the wall pulsed. Then it sort of peeled back and in walked the Queen, Queen Elira, same unreadable expression, same long gold-tipped ears. Same terrifying presence of someone who could command fleets or bake very judgmental cookies. She held something in her hand, a shimmering disk of light with glyphs drifting around it like lazy fish. "I trust your quarters are adequate," she said. "Honestly, I've stayed in worse. Once crashed on a desert moon and had to sleep inside a dead war beast. It snored in its sleep." Her brow lifted half a centimeter. That was progress. She walked to the center of the room, and the light disk extended into a full projection, a spiraling constellation with ancient runes orbiting a central mark. "My scar. This symbol," she began, "is called the sign of Ivar. It appeared in the first codex of our ancestors. It was believed to mark the one who would return balance to the lost branches of the Orillari. We assumed it to be a metaphor." "Right. And now that metaphor's wearing a dirty uniform and smells like fried circuitry. Surprise." She ignored that. "It is more than appearance. Our scans indicate trace genetic markers, old strands buried deep in your DNA. You carry fragments of something Orillari. Well, I always suspected I was part alien. My coffee tolerance is too high to be natural. This is not jest. It's how I cope." A small pause. She looked at me like I was a cracked mirror, reflecting something familiar but also very wrong. I sat down on the talking bed, which murmured gravity is subjective, and sighed. "Let's say you're right. Let's say I'm carrying ancient alien DNA and a sacred scar. What do you actually want from me?" She hesitated. That was worrying. "We are a dying people, Lieutenant Mercer, cut off from the stars. Our technology decays. Our faith fractures. The sign of Ivar was a myth clung to by a few, but now you are here. And you think I'm here to fix everything. I do not know, but I must find out." Another pause. She wasn't good at pauses. They weren't regal, they were human, vulnerable. The projection shifted. It now showed a holographic map of ancient Orillari systems, bright stars now marked with red overlays. These were our colonies, all gone, destroyed or disconnected. Before the collapse, we sent one final expedition to a blue world system. Their ship vanished. I stared. You're saying one of your ships made it to Earth? We do not know if it reached, only that it was aimed there. The passengers were chosen. Gene-forged, they bore the sign. And you think I'm descended from one of them? I do not think, I hope. Well, that was worse. A chime interrupted. A drone floated in spherical, polished chrome and clearly unimpressed with everything. Analysis complete, it said in a voice like dry sarcasm and expired library cards. Elira turned. Report, Knox 13. Subject Mercer is 87. 6% standard Homo sapiens. 12. 2% anomalous Orillari strain. Subcellular symbiosis detected. Also, his cholesterol is slightly elevated. Recommend more fiber. Thank you, Knox, I muttered. Always nice to be read like a grocery receipt. The drone rotated. You're welcome. Please refrain from dying. It would inconvenience the prophecy. I blinked. I thought you didn't believe in the prophecy. I don't. But if it gets the High Seers to stop chanting near my recharge pod at 3 a.m., I'll play along. Elira turned back to me. We will take you to the Hall of Echoes. The High Seers will perform the confirmation. If you are what we suspect, everything will change. Okay, but just for the record, if this turns into some kind of ritual where I have to fight a shadow beast or drink glowing liquid, I'm gonna need hazard pay. No beast, she said. No liquids, just memory. Perfect, mind trips. My favorite. They led me through a corridor that responded to our steps. Walls of light opened and closed. A platform lifted us silently through a vertical shaft lit by bioluminescent runes. At one point, Knox floated ahead of us humming the tune to what I later learned was an Orillari funeral march, but played at double speed because he was in a hurry. We arrived at the Hall of Echoes. Imagine a library crossed with a cathedral and uploaded into a dream. The walls whispered as we entered. Soundless voices. Memories encoded in atmosphere. 9 seers stood in a circle. Tall, thin figures with robes that shimmered like water viewed through fire. No faces, just masks etched with fractals and time. I stepped forward. A low hum filled the chamber. The seers didn't move, but the air around them began to glow. The lead seer spoke not aloud but into my head. The scar has been marked. The thread has returned. The pattern breathes. Then I was somewhere else. Not physically, but my mind had been yanked sideways. I saw stars forming. I saw the Orillari rise. Cities grown from crystal, thought-powered ships cutting across galaxies. Then fire, collapse. A final ship. A desperate hope. And then Earth. Images flickered, tribes, wars, a soldier clutching his side in pain as a scar formed over a wound not meant to heal. Me, I gasped and staggered back. Elira caught my arm. Her grip was firm, not royal, real. What did you see? She asked. My great-great-grandfather, I said, and he looked just like me, and he wasn't from Earth. A long silence. Knox drifted in. So, no beasts, no drinks, just emotional trauma. Excellent. The seers bowed as one. The sign has returned, the skyborn lives. Elira looked at me with something unreadable again. Then said very quietly, Cade Mercer, you are the living edge of a prophecy we thought long dead. I cleared my throat. So, can I go back to the room with the talking bed now? You will stay with me, she said. You are now too important. Knox 13 clicked. I'll prepare guest quarters in the royal wing. And by prepare, I mean I'll try not to sabotage them. No promises. Great. I was a genetic miracle, the fulfillment of an ancient myth, and a guest in a palace run by a sarcastic drone. What could possibly go wrong? The royal wing was nice. And by nice, I mean it made the rest of the palace look like a broom closet. Doors that whispered open before you reached them. Floors that adjusted their firmness based on your mood, which I found out after stubbing my toe and watching the floor retaliate. and ceiling panels that displayed starfields from different points in Orolari history. I spent a good 20 minutes staring at a war between two constellations before realizing it was a dramatized documentary. The captions read, Episode 4, Revenge of the Moon Goblins. Riveting. Queen Elira wasn't exactly one for small talk, but she did start showing up more often. Sometimes she asked questions about Earth, culture, languages, history. Other times she just watched me, like I was a puzzle someone had assembled upside down. So, I asked her one evening, while attempting to eat a translucent Orolari fruit that kept rearranging its segments to avoid being bitten, what exactly do your people want from me? Besides, reverent stares and unsolicited genetic analysis. She glanced at the fruit which I had finally trapped under a spoon. We want truth, answers, and possibly a future. Ah, I said, stabbing the fruit. It squeaked. No pressure then. She didn't smile, but her ears twitched slightly. That was a win. Later that night, I was awakened by Nox 13 projecting a light field directly onto my face. You are invited to the Codex chamber. The Queen requests your presence. Does she ever sleep? She enters a meditative stasis twice per cycle. Sometimes, when the moons align, you're very chatty for someone with bed hair that resembles a small planetary collision. Give me 5 minutes and caffeine. There is no caffeine, only radiant fluid stimulation. I hate everything. The Codex chamber was located beneath the palace, or maybe above. The palace didn't really obey Euclidean geometry. I gave up trying to track directions after the third hallway folded in on itself and deposited us at a completely different altitude. Inside the chamber, a massive sphere hovered in midair, covered in glowing glyphs that rotated like constellations in orbit. It pulsed with slow, deliberate energy. I was told it was a neural archive, one that housed not data but memory, generational, deep, biological. This, Elira said as I stepped forward, is the codex of lives it remembers. Every Orolari who ever lived, whose thoughts were recorded, exists within. So, it's your people's Facebook, but with less oversharing and more existential dread. It is sacred. Got it, no memes. The glyphs shifted. A section of the sphere opened, revealing a swirling tunnel of light. I want you to interface, Elira said. We believe there is a match waiting for you, one whose memory may explain the sign. I eyed the tunnel. Will this hurt? It depends. On what? Your pain threshold. Excellent, let's fire up the memory blender. The interface was instantaneous. One moment I stood in the chamber. The next, I was falling sideways through time. Sights, smells, emotions, not mine, cascaded through me like a flood. I saw a man with skin like starlight, a soldier who looked eerily like me but taller and much more competent. He wore armor etched with the same symbol as my scar. He stood at the helm of a ship bleeding fire, speaking into a comm link as stars collapsed behind him. Then I saw her, Elira but younger, laughing. She wore less regality, more joy. She and the man embraced, not romantically, familially. The voice echoed, "My sister, I leave this burden to the stars." Then darkness. I gasped and stumbled as I was yanked back into the codex chamber. Elira caught me again like she always did. Her hands trembled. "You saw him," she said. "Ivar. Your brother. My twin. He vanished before the collapse. No one knew what became of his expedition. The ship was never found. He sent the sign forward, through bloodlines." "Well," I said, sitting down hard on a floating bench that adjusted to my mood, which was somewhere between traumatized and dazed but snackish. "I guess that makes us distant family. Sort of, cousins with space benefits." Elira ignored that. Nox, however, muttered, "Galactic genetics just got complicated." She walked to the codex and placed her palm against it. The glyphs recoiled, then calmed. "There are others who will not accept this. The prophecy has always been seen as a weakness, a fantasy." "Then maybe don't call it a prophecy," I said. "Call it a well-supported theory with mysterious glowing evidence. Sounds more scientific." She almost smiled. Almost. We returned to the palace in silence. The stars outside looked different, closer, hungrier. The next morning, or whatever passed for morning in a palace that ran on moonlight and drama, I found Nox scanning my boots with a judgmental beam. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Your footwear offends the palace censors. They believe you tracked in molecular despair." They were standard issue, comfy, durable, unforgivable. He floated away. I headed to the observation deck, where Elira was already waiting. She pointed to the sky. A new light blinked there, fast, intermittent. "That is not ours." "What is it?" "A ship, and not friendly. The reclamation faction. They reject everything pre-collapse. They despise the prophecy. If they know you exist, they will act." "I'm flattered. Intergalactic death threats really warm the soul." She turned to me. "We need to prepare. If what you carry is truly the legacy of Ivar, you are the key to healing our people or igniting a war." "Let's aim for healing," I said. "I'm terrible at wars. I duck a lot and yell medic even when I'm fine." I noticed. There was a pause. "Thank you for not disintegrating me when we first met," I added. "You were curious. And surprisingly persistent." "I prefer endearingly indestructible." Nox floated by. "I prefer statistical anomaly with a sarcasm defect." The Queen finally laughed. A small sound, quick and real. I smiled. "Progress." Outside, the ship in orbit flared red. The reclamation faction had seen us. Everything was about to change. Again. We were briefed in the war circle, which sounded significantly more dramatic than it actually was. It wasn't a circle, for one, more like a spiral. And calling it a war room was generous, considering it served equally well as a meditation chamber, a council platform, and judging by the leftover snacks, someone's quiet lunch spot. Elira stood at the center, flanked by her strategists, 3 tall, dignified individuals who looked like they judged people professionally. Nox hovered behind them, intermittently projecting tactical readouts and muttering cynical assessments like probability of success. Statistically insulting, and tactical brilliance, not detected in room. I leaned against one of the curving walls, chewing on a piece of something that tasted like licorice and static electricity. I wasn't officially part of the meeting, but considering I was now Orillari myth personified trademark, they didn't exactly send me away. Elira spoke first. "The reclamation faction's ship has entered high orbit. It is powered by pre-collapse fusion spirals, obsolete but capable of planetary strikes." One of the advisors, a tall figure with armor that shimmered like snake scales, nodded. "They will demand your surrender, or threaten to purge the surface." Another added, "Their belief is fundamentalist. They do not want unity. They want silence. You, your grace, and the human are noise." I raised my hand. "Can I be upgraded to extremely charming noise?" "Feels more accurate." They ignored me. This was becoming a pattern. Elira turned. "We have 2 choices, negotiate or resist. Can we do a third thing? Like passive-aggressively avoid eye contact and hope they leave?" "No." "Worth a shot." Nox projected a schematic of the reclamation vessel. Class: Seraphim Dreadskiff. Primary weapons: ionic lances and kinetic compression rails. Secondary weapons: strong opinions and ideological monologues. Shields are patchy. Their targeting system runs on outdated neural mapping. Recommend exploit via cognitive loop disruption. I blinked. "Are you saying we can confuse their ship's computer?" "Yes, with sufficient nonsense." Finally, my time has come. The plan, such as it was, hinged on distraction. Elira's fleet, what remained of it, would engage from orbit. Meanwhile, I would be inserted into the reclamation ship via teleport splice, a process I was assured was safe-ish, and deliver a cognitive spike into their mainframe. "So let me get this straight," I said, strapping on an armored harness. "I'm being shot through space, teleported into a hostile warship, and asked to infect its AI with concentrated idiocy." "Correct." "Did I get promoted or demoted?" "Unclear." The teleport chamber looked like a combination tanning bed and sacrificial altar. I lay back, trying not to think about the last guy who used it. Spoiler, there wasn't one. I was the field test. The technician gave me a thumbs up. Knox counted down. 3, 2, 1. May your atoms remain in friendly terms with each other. There was a flash. I arrived midair, which was a problem because gravity hadn't yet decided where it was supposed to go. I hit the floor sideways, slid into a wall, and groaned. Good news, I was alive. Bad news, I was in the enemy ship and someone had definitely noticed. Alarms blared. Lights flashed. The corridor I'd landed in curved upward, then twisted left like a bad idea. I staggered forward, guided by Knox's signal ping in my earpiece. Take the next intersection and disable the gravity corridor. Also, there may be drones. Friendly drones. Statistically improbable. A bot dropped from the ceiling and took one look at me before deploying 6 limbs and a buzzsaw. I fired my stunner, missing entirely, then ducked as it lunged. My second shot hit its core. It fell in a heap of twitching servos and something that smelled like burnt aluminum and misplaced confidence. Drone down, I said. Congratulations. Your odds of survival have improved by 0.3%. Do I get a badge? You get to keep your spleen. Progress. I reached the mainframe chamber, a glowing sphere suspended in a ring of rotating pylons. The AI housing, a glassy interface, hummed with low static. I plugged in the spike, a palm-sized disk encoded with looping paradoxes, recursive jokes, and 5 hours of poorly translated human sitcoms. The AI hesitated. Then its voice echoed. Who, what is? Why is laughter pain? Why is banana both a fruit and a punchline? Knox whispered, it's working. Define working. Cognitive disruption rising. Target AI rebooting. It is now attempting stand-up comedy. What's the deal with ionic lances? Am I right? Definitely working. I set a timer on the overload sequence. 30 seconds, I bolted. The corridor tilted. Explosions rocked the walls. I skidded around a corner, dove through an escape port, and activated my suit beacon. Get me out of here, I shouted. Teleport pull engaged. I was yanked back through reality like a yo-yo in reverse. Back in the palace, I crashed into the ground with a thud. Elira rushed in. Did you succeed? I wheezed. Their AI is currently trying to win open mic night. Yes. She extended a hand. I took it. Moments later, sensors confirmed it. The reclamation vessel was powering down, disoriented, harmless. For now, Knox floated beside us. That was either the most daring sabotage of the decade or the dumbest stroke of luck in galactic history. Why not both? I said. Elira looked at me. You continue to defy reason. I've made a career out of it. She shook her head. There will be consequences. The faction will not accept this humiliation. Then let them come, I said. But next time I'm sending 2 sitcoms. The Queen smiled. The war for now was paused, but destiny, whatever that meant, was watching, and possibly laughing. I stood on the observation deck sipping something Knox 13 insisted was tea, though it fizzed like a carbonated battery and tried to escape the cup twice. Outside, the reclamation ship drifted in orbit, lights dimmed, weapons silenced, pride thoroughly dented. They hadn't left. Not yet, but they weren't talking either, probably recalibrating their belief system. Or their AI was still attempting to master timing. Elira joined me, hands clasped behind her back, expression unreadable, which I now understood meant she was thinking very hard while pretending not to. Royalty stuff. You've caused quite a shift, she said. Hey, all I did was fall out of the sky and hack a militant warship using comedy. Completely normal Tuesday. Many in the court believe your arrival marks the resurgence of the Skyborn Accord. Others believe I'm an inconvenient genetic prank, I added. Some of them. Still an upgrade from Trespasser. Knox floated between us with a faint electrical hum. Consensus. 71% of Oralari citizens now view you as a figure of interest. 12% worship you. 4% fear you. The rest are undecided, but enjoy your interviews. You did interviews without telling me. You're more likable when you don't know you're being recorded. Elira smiled. The High Seers have begun revising the codex. Your memories are now archived. Well, that's terrifying. Please tell me they edited out the part where I cried after stepping on an angry floor panel. No promises. We walked through the palace gardens, suspended orbs of controlled biospheres orbiting a core path. One orb held earth plants newly cultivated. Another glowed with orillari flora I still swore whispered when you passed them. Peace is delicate, Elira said, but possible. The reclamation leaders have agreed to a summit. No demands. Just dialogue. Let me guess. They want to make sure I don't start glowing and declaring myself Space Jesus. They want to understand why the past isn't just myth anymore. Fair, I said. I barely understand it myself. We passed a shrine newly built. My scar had been etched into its central pillar, stylized and wrapped in branching glyphs. Beneath it was an inscription. I asked what it said. It reads, she said, from fracture the thread returns, not to lead, but to remember. I like that, subtle, humble. And you? I hesitated. I came here broken, half-dead, sarcastic to survive. Now I'm slightly less broken and sarcastic for fun. Progress. Knox buzzed, sounding pleased. Your latest medical scan shows stable vitals, increased serotonin, and only moderate sleep deprivation. Statistically, you are now functional. I'll take it. Later, we stood in the Hall of Echoes again. This time, Elira wasn't leading me. We walked as equals. The seers greeted us not with chants but with questions. They asked me what I remembered, what I felt. I told them about Ivar, about his last message, about how much like me he looked and how different he had been. I told them I didn't come to lead anyone. I came to survive. But if survival meant helping people remember who they were, who they could be, well, I could do that. Maybe not as a hero. Maybe just as the guy who made jokes at the right time and didn't die falling out of the sky. When the summit finally happened, I stood behind Elira while reclamation delegates filed into the great chamber. They looked tired, suspicious, defensive. Elira welcomed them not with speeches but with a question. What do you fear more? She asked. That the past is real or that it is not? They didn't answer right away, but they listened. It wasn't peace. Not yet, but it was possible, and that was more than anyone had dared hope. A month passed. I stayed. Elira asked me once quietly why I hadn't tried to return to Earth. I shrugged and said I'd left the stove on, and the thought haunted me. The truth. Earth never had talking beds, sarcastic drones, or royalty who quoted prophecy while smirking behind their eyes. Earth never gave me a reason to matter. Here I had one, even if it came with weird fruit and the occasional assassination attempt. Knox upgraded my quarters. I now had a window that showed rotating starfields and played ambient whale noises from 3 different planets. He called it calm chaos. I started teaching the palace staff card games. Orillari were terrible bluffers, but enthusiastic. Elira accused me of rigging the deck. I reminded her she had a throne made of sentient stone and maybe she could lose a round of poker with grace. She lost again. Blamed prophecy. I laughed. So did she. Then one evening she handed me a datapad. What's this? A proposal, she said. We rebuild the Ivarian Accord, not as empire, not as doctrine, as alliance, with Earth, with any world willing to listen. And me. You'll be our envoy. I'm not exactly diplomatic. Exactly. I looked at the datapad, then at her, then at the stars. Okay, I said, but I want a cool title. You already have one. I raised an eyebrow. The Scarbearer of Stars. I blinked. That sounds like a dramatic tattoo waiting to happen. She stepped closer, or a beginning. And it was, not of prophecy, not of destiny, just of something new, something remembered. And maybe for the first time in a very long time, something real.